My name is Tom Bunker. I am the admin of the Recover from Long COVID via fasting/autophagy. And today's topic is going to be Lactobacillus and discussing my experience and Mayur's experience using cautious dosing of Lactobacillus to try to prime our innate immunity and try to basically clear the virus out of our bodies. I'm a big proponent of, I believe there's persistent virus in the majority of long haulers. Why in the world would we take a probiotic that has historically been used for, general digestive health to try to improve our long COVID symptoms? And the science behind it is really quite amazing, and it's just fairly recent. But recently, they've shown that certain species of bacteria shed these basically microvesicles, or basically balloons containing tiny bits of their bacterial DNA. Some experiments in animal models, particularly mice, have shown that these balloons of microbial DNA, they're so small, they diffuse through the gut into our blood vessels and travel throughout our body and randomly fuse with our cells. So probably millions, probably billions of cells get these little balloons of bacterial DNA attached, and they release their bacterial DNA into the cells. And our cells have a number of ancient pathogen sensors, some for viral mRNA, some for bacterial DNA. But no matter the sensor, the cellular pathways converge on the production of type 1 interferons, which stimulate hundreds of genes, such as RNase L, to degrade bacterial RNAs, and a lot of other ancient cellular defenses to put our cells in a very unfriendly state for any pathogen, be it a bacteria or a viral pathogen. So that's the basic idea behind this. And now we'll kind of talk about, my Lactobacillus guide and just some real life experiences. What have I experienced? What has Mayur experienced? So I'd like to welcome Mayur, who's in Pune, India. And he's, one of the early adopters of, trying Lactobacillus for his long COVID symptoms. And I just want to throw in a quick disclaimer, like, this is all self-experimental. I'm not a medical doctor. We're all in desperate straits. We're trying a whole bunch of different things. This is something that theoretically, as a scientist, I think this has promise, but nobody knows yet. It's going to take months and probably a rigorous data study at some point to determine, how much this helps improve our symptoms, et cetera. So Mayur, just give us briefly your background as a long hauler.
Yes, so hello everyone. My name is Mayur. I'm from India. I'm 32 years old. I had COVID in, I think, September, October 2020. I was not possibly, probably too sick of it. I was home quarantine only. I never went to hospital for any stuff like that. But yeah, I got recovered, means my test came positive after 14 to 15 days. Later on, I figured out that my cough, it was there for like almost 2 months. I was constantly coughing even after my reports were negative. I had, within 1 month of becoming negative from COVID, I started this feeling of brain fog. I could not walk straight. I was completely off the balance, and I didn't know what's happening with me. My vision was completely different. My body was just, when I used to walk, I was constantly focusing on how do I keep my balance straight when I'm walking on the road. I was scared to tell people that this is happening to me. And then doctor put me on some medical tests, vitamin D, B12 and all this stuff. Vitamin D was, significantly low in my reports, but after 2, 3 months, it came normal. So this is after, like, 5, 6 months story that I'm telling you. But in that month, I recovered completely. In the month of December, I was completely fine. I had no symptoms of long hauler. Then suddenly after June, I went through some physical and mental stress, which is a different story. But yeah, and June I again started getting flare-ups like dizziness suddenly,
So,
and ever
so
since today.
excuse me, Mayur. So you pretty much completely recovered from your initial bout with long COVID?
Yeah, I was recovered,
That's
and
interesting because I mean, I had a similar experience and then I got reinfected and then I got more severe long COVID. Uh,
yeah, I was. I don't know if I got
you-
reinfected or not,
yeah, it's hard to
because
tell sometimes,
because
isn't it?
I might have, because I never done COVID test. But ever since June 2021 till today, it's been a hell of a ride, like a roller coaster, like very, very deep, curves. And I was really scared. From head to toe, I had almost many symptoms, many symptoms.
So you have a fair number of neurological symptoms, right?
Yes.
And you just touch on those briefly.
Uh, that, the first symptom was definitely brain fog. The second one was, maintaining my balance. If I, turn my head some rapidly, then I would feel something dizziness. Tinnitus I have. I'm still having tinnitus, but it's more moderately low. Yeah. So these are the neurological symptoms, and
And you
yeah,
had some numbness in your little fingers.
yeah, only these two fingers, one, two. It had, right now I don't have. Sometimes I feel, glimpse of those, that I might have those again, but it's not that much. I had this for like 1.5 months. Only this two finger, and only on the left hand.
Yes, very interesting.
Yeah.
The symptoms, the constellation of symptoms is large, and it seems so random between individuals on exactly what symptoms
Yeah, and
people
also
get.
one more neurological symptom is, speaking difficulty. Sometimes, words, mispronunciation of words, pronouncing wrong word when I know what I want to pronounce, and I would just, pronounce a different word of similar vocabulary, or pronunciation. That I had in the past. It used to come and go, like 1 week I have those symptoms, and 1 week they're gone.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I had a recent long-term memory episode, which is, it always surprises me when it happens. It doesn't happen that often, but when it does happen, it just alarms me. And I was at a gas station filling up the car with gas, and you put in your credit card, and then it asks you for your zip code, your postal code, as a validation. And I typed in, that's something I never think about. And so I typed in the number, and it was wrong. And I didn't realize it was wrong. It took me an
Yeah.
embarrassingly long time to figure out that I didn't even know my own postal code anymore. Uh,
Yeah, this happened to me as well, because I used to, very fast typing. I had insane speed. So whenever I used to, if I want to pay something like digital payment, and if I want to pay some amount, I would always type differently. Like, it was a wrong number, but I used to immediately recognize it. No, no, I'm not typing a correct number. So I used to recorrect it. But yeah, this, even reading was difficult for me. Even now also, if I watch words, I sometimes mispronounce them. It's hard for me to,
yes.
process all those stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's clear that, whether or not the viral infection is actually in our brain or parts of our brain, I think this brain fog reflects inflammation of at least the blood-brain barrier, kind of, the outside surface of the brain. that's nasty. Anytime we get inflammation in the brain, it can disrupt a lot of things. And it seems like long haulers are have reduced processing capacity in the brain in several different aspects, visually or, mentally trying to do difficult things. Those things are just harder. We're slower at it.
Yeah, and I'm especially from the creative person, so I am from the creative background, so it hampered my thought process as well. Like the pre-COVID, I was like, I was building all this, creative ads and innovations. Right now, I am somehow better right now as compared to past 1 year. But yeah, I really struggled, in my job, in my family, coping up with my kid who's only 2 years old. It's a tough journey.
Yeah. I feel for you, Mayur, and for everyone else, struggling to be productive and maintain their work, their income for their family, and for the moms that are like trying to, raise their kids, and they
Yeah,
have,
yeah,
less bandwidth to do things. It's really rough. Okay, let's switch and talk about lactobacillus, or come back to
yeah.
lactobacillus again. I was attracted to this actually because my colleague, Dr. Jeff Novak, who's an immunologist and pharmacologist, had pointed out some scientific research talking about the antiviral effect of certain probiotics, particularly some of the lactobacillus species of bacteria. And for example, in mice, they can give mice an antibiotic and kill a bunch of their microbiome. And then they treat them with various viral pathogens. And the mice were getting very sick, and a lot of them were dying. They do the exact same thing, treat them with antibiotic, give them a dose of lactobacillus, and then expose them to a couple of different viral pathogens, and they survive. And it's just, it's really intriguing. How in the world
Yeah.
can a probiotic have an antiviral effect? So I was intrigued by the science, and I wanted to try it. And I knew some people, some long haulers that were taking it, but the default is to take any supplement or probiotic on a daily basis. And from my understanding of the science, I was concerned that, this is stimulating our innate immunity. It may not be optimum to take it daily. And so I took a dose, I think I took a dose of 20 billion the first time, 10 or 20, I forget which, I think it was 20 billion. Anyway, I had a big flare up of my symptoms. And I was, I thought, wow, this is kind of like autophagy, where if you water fast and my symptoms would temporarily increase. This is doing something similar, except for I also had mild nausea and like more of a bloated gut feeling, which were fairly unique to the aspects to the increase in symptoms from the lactobacillus. But anyway, so I've been using it for about over 2 months now, except for I've been using it just on a very sporadic basis, because it seems like the more I use it over time, the longer the flare up of my symptoms. So I'm confident in saying this is not something you want to take daily. And it's something you may not even need to take weekly. It's like my current thinking is that you need to go by your symptoms. Once your symptoms kind of die down to baseline, or your new baseline, then allow a couple rest days and take another dose. So Mayur, what is your experience with lactobacillus?
Yeah. 3 weeks back, I took my first sachet. I think it came into the sachet. I didn't get the capsule one, so I took it.
Found a sachet with Lactobacillus rhamnosus, right? Like 5 or 6 billion.
Yeah, 6 billion one. I might show it on the camera if
because I remember I was trying to help you find some lactobacillus in India, and I went on Amazon India, and I found an LP 299 10 billion strain comparable to the Yarrow product that's available in the US and much of the world, and it was prescription only in India, to my surprise.
But yeah, I took it like 3 weeks, I think 3.5 weeks back. I took my first dose of lactobacillus. I took only one sachet, and then I think I called Tom, and I told him that I have got nothing. I didn't get any flare-ups. I got no reactions because my symptoms were severely low because I already following the autophagy protocol. I was following 16:8, and no sugar and no carb, no basically carbs and dairy products. Diet I was following. Then Tom suggested me to take two sachets at one time. I took it, and the day after I took those sachets, I think the day after I took the sachet, I got flare-ups. Like it took me 2 days actually to get all those flare-ups. Then those flare-ups lasted for I think 2 3 days. I again called Tom, and he suggested me to just watch up.
After you took two sachets, or about 12 billion of the
Yeah.
L-rhamnosus, your symptoms flared up most strongly 2 days later?
Yeah, it was 2 days later. I felt kind of sick. You know, when you are about to get fever, the way you feel like that, you always want to sleep. I had a big insomnia issue earlier, and I was scared that I might not get sleep again because I have reactivated this stuff again. I might have accidentally reactivated this stuff again. But
Yeah.
after 2 3 days again, the symptoms, the severity of symptoms went down, down, down. Then I got to know, okay, this stuff is reacting over my body. Then I felt good for 5 6 days, and then I took another dose of lactobacillus, but I took only one sachet, not two sachets.
I think that's very good to be cautious like that. I mean, my ideas are that the SARS-CoV-2 virus in cells where it's infected and it's like basically a pirate and it's taking out over, it controls the cell metabolism, and it produces 30 proteins, only 5 of which it needs to build new virions. And the rest of them specifically block or otherwise interfere with the generation of type 1 interferons. So basically, this virus is doing everything possible to shut down our innate immunity as triggered by the production of type 1 interferons. And in the molecular level, it's got at least 16 different tricks, specific proteins that are in the interferon type 1 pathway, sensing and production pathway, that it is shutting down. So this is not unique to SARS-CoV-2, but SARS-CoV-2 may be better than almost any other virus that's been studied at doing this. So Mayur, after your second dose, where you just did the one sachet or the 5 or 6 billion, how much did your symptoms flare up?
It was similar. It was not that severe, sachet, I guess, but it did for at least one and a half day or maybe 2 days. It was not that severe as compared to those sachet. But yeah, I again messed up with my diet, as already told you. So a couple of bad things I ate, and the symptoms came back again. But again, today I'm feeling a little better than past 2 days. Still have this weird stuff around the eyes.
Yeah. You said you ate, loosened up your diet
I
and had maybe
cream,
1.5 beers, and that
one
certainly
and a half
didn't help.
beer I had, and wheat I had. I had ice cream because everyone was eating ice cream with me, and I was just, and
Oh.
the bad thing is, people even in my office today, they celebrate, they bring up the sweets in front of me, and I was like, picking a point, and then I think, no, better keep it over there only.
Right. It's tough. I love ice cream, and I haven't had ice cream for 2.5 years at least. So, yeah, certain
tough.
things, of course, you miss more than others. With the sugar, the way I try to keep myself disciplined is like I just tell myself, well, with sugar, Tom, don't do it. You'll feed the virus, and that helps me. That helps my discipline.
Exactly. When you remember all those freaky nights, you wouldn't want to touch them.
Yeah.
But yeah,
we're human. We all have moments of weakness, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you would like to try it, right?
Yeah. And then, the thing that I also recommend that people avoid is wheat or especially white flour, where it's been highly processed.
Dairy products.
Because it seems like the majority of long haulers kind of develop this leaky gut or symptoms similar to intestinal bowel syndrome. Like I've never had any problems with wheat, but once I got long COVID, all of a sudden that was a problem. I think that this lactobacillus, can prime our cells to fight a viral infection. From my experience and from what I'm hearing from other early adopters of this lactobacillus self-treatment is that it takes time to see significant improvements. I myself have been doing it for at least 8 weeks since I first started. I think I am seeing some improvement, some slow progress, but it's been kind of slow.
One more thing we discussed on that the lactobacillus, but they are saying they're not getting any flare-ups. This could be because they are taking it so much on daily basis, and their body is already in the panic mode. So they might not understand it that whether if this is a flare-up or this is actually the symptom that they are going through. So
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Mayur. 80% of the individuals are experiencing a significant flare-up of their symptoms after taking lactobacillus. And this can be as little as 3 billion CFU. Probiotics sold for kids are like 3 to 5 billion CFU. So that can be a strong enough dose to flare up your symptoms. But you're right. I have about 6 people that have 5 or 6 people that have not experienced an increase in their symptoms. And like you said, it could be that they're just in a flare up all the time. So they take the lactobacillus and it really doesn't make any difference. But it could also be several different things. I think that, of course, there could be genetic factors involved where it's, for some reason, it's not working for them. The people that take it daily, I think that, this is basically like sounding the pathogen alarm. You're at an office building and, there's a fire breaks out somewhere and someone pulls the fire alarm. Well, if you keep pulling that fire alarm all the time, like first the fire department and the ambulance are going to come. The second time they'll come. But if it happens all the time, they stop coming. And then I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect that maybe something like that can happen for the people that take lactobacillus daily. Although I do recall one individual that was taking the lactobacillus daily, and he took it for like 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks. Suddenly he had a big flare up of symptoms. So I don't really know what's going on if they're not able to break through the viral suppression of the interferon signaling, what I call the viral defensive shield, or if the body's ignoring it because it's getting too many fire alarms. It's a little bit of a mystery right now.
So one more thing that I would like to suggest here, that we don't have concrete data that this is going to work and this is not going to work. We are also experimenting this stuff on our own body. What I would suggest that you should take things slowly, and instead of what I have learned from my own experience is that we are so desperate to get out of this. We are ready to do anything, any possible thing to just get rid of all this long hauler stuff. So just do not rush it.
I agree with that, Mayur. I mean, I think it's just human nature to try to, well, maybe this will help, maybe this help, maybe this help, or if a little bit is good, a lot is even better. And I agree. We have to back off from that human tendency, and especially with lactobacillus, start with a small dose. And like you did, if the small dose doesn't work, wait 3 days, because it can be a day or 2 before your symptoms flare up. Wait and see if your symptoms flare up or not. And if they don't, then, maybe double the dose and see if you get the symptom flare up.
Even after taking dose, you should wait for 4 or 5 days sometimes, because it can take 4 or 5 days to flare up.
Yeah, I think most of the time some people get the flare up starts within 6 hours. So if you took it in the morning, you would start to feel increased symptoms that same day. But yes, this is not like a lot of medicines. You're taking a bacteria into your gut. And how long does it take to get established and start throwing off these fragments of the bacterial DNA? I think it takes at least a day, and it may peak at 2 or 3 days. That's probably variable from person to person.
Yeah, and only that person can tell when you should take the next dose.
Yeah, and I like what you did. Once you had your breakthrough and you had your increased symptoms, which of course I call the Verks reaction, because I believe it's our symptoms flare up because our immune system is recognizing the virally infected cells and is taking appropriate action. And that's when we get our symptom flare up. So even though it's counterintuitive, I think our symptom flare ups in response to water fasting or resveratrol, or in this case,
Yeah.
lactobacillus, I think it's good. It means our body is actively fighting the virus. But we don't want it to be so bad that we can't sleep or that it goes on and just totally exhausts us.
Definitely. You don't want to do that, man. You don't want to suffer through all this stuff.
Yeah, it's a long battle, and we just have to take it in measured doses. He's kind of also an early adopter, and he's interesting. He was vaccine injured. His symptoms started after his mRNA vaccination, but he took lactobacillus, and I think at 10 billion, and he had a big flare up of his symptoms, just like a typical COVID long hauler. So seems to have the same effect, whether you're vaccine injured or any type of long hauler.
But how do you feel now after taking lactobacillus, like in current?
So for me, it caused a pretty strong flare up of symptoms, my existing symptoms, and also surfaced some old symptoms that I hadn't had for a long time. So I hadn't had brain fog, at least not severe brain fog, for a long time. And I remember on the 4th of July, which is the Independence Day in the US, I wanted to watch the fireworks on TV. And I was having a flare up. I was sensitive to noise. I was sensitive to visual processing. And I had to turn off the TV. I couldn't even watch the country's birthday celebration on TV. And I was just amazed that it was hitting me so hard. And then the next morning I was fine, but it was just a flare up. Let's see some of the other symptoms. Mainly it's surfaced neurological symptoms where I've done a lot of autophagy and fasting, although I've plateaued, over the last year, where, I get to a certain level and then I don't get any better, with some minor ups and downs in between. But the lactobacillus seems to be going after the virus in my nerves, which have been, I think, relatively, like autophagy just wasn't strong enough to get rid of it in my nerves. So for years, I've had a kind of a occasional soreness in my right leg. And over the last year of my long COVID, my right leg has been getting weak. And sometimes I have a hard time lifting it high to go up a set of stairs. And so suddenly the lactobacillus caused this nerve pain, like probably in my femoral nerve, which has many branches. It was mainly in my upper thigh, but occasionally it would go down into my lower leg. And it would cause these flare-ups of my nerves. And I could feel it in my right leg. I also felt it in the back of my neck, which is the occipital nerve. And then I really felt it. So first of all, it hit the back of the neck. And then after a couple of weeks, it started lighting up the nerves in my throat, around my Adam's apple and all the way up into my lower jaw. And even one time I remember like a thin section of my tongue or the roof of my mouth was inflamed. It was like bizarre. Over the weeks, or maybe months is a better adjective, the nerve soreness in the back of my neck has 95% cleared up. And now the nerve soreness in my throat, which is there's a bunch of cranial nerves. The occipital nerve does the back of the neck and the back of the head. The glossopharyngeal nerve kind of innervates the throat area and the lower jaw and up towards a little bit up towards the ears. Now my throat area is like 80% better. I think it's clearing it from my throat. And now lately I've been getting it more on the side of my neck, which I think is another cranial nerve. And also occasionally I would get like a focused headache right behind my left eye. And I don't know, but I suspect that
I
might be
also
my
get that.
optic nerve.
Yeah, I also get kind of weird things around my eyes, and I had weird pain and pressure behind my eyes. I felt like someone is just plucking my eyeballs out of my eye socket. Uh,
Wow. Yeah, mine
one
was mild compared to that, but it was bad enough that it made it so that it was at times, like I didn't want to drive or I wanted to stop driving, things like that.
Driving, I was okay with it. I never had a problem driving. I had only problem when I used to walk. If I'm
Oh,
driving, I'm completely fine. I'm 100% in my senses because I'm not physically, forcing my body to do something. But if I physically do something, then I get the flare-ups and
that's interesting because like when I had a flare up and I was driving, it was like it was just too much visual processing for my brain
yeah,
and my nerve was sore. Like if I cut out, the as much of my peripheral vision as I could, that helped. So I think it was, it was clear that I was just getting an overload of some type.
yeah, yeah.
I think I think it's a really good thing that now I'm feeling the soreness in my nerves because a lot of long haulers have various neurological symptoms from small fiber neuropathy in the periphery to numbness in their hands and feet, and as well as back of the neck soreness and on and on and on. But in general, persistent viruses often cause neurological symptoms because it's just the nerves are a specialized cell type that the body hesitates to kill and replace because it's difficult to replace nerves. So some of the body's defensive mechanisms that may work in the muscles or in the gut or elsewhere, it says, no, that's a nerve. Don't touch that. That's off limits. So I think that we need this innate immunity, the mechanisms of innate immunity to hopefully, potentially, clear it from our nerves.
The main question that a lot of people are confused: how do you differentiate long COVID with other diseases?
Well, I've avoided getting into the diagnosis arena because, that's clearly a medical doctor arena. But, in my welcome post to the group each week, I give a link to my Score Your Long COVID Symptoms survey, and it
Yeah,
has 25 of the most common long COVID symptoms. And I've learned this over time through multiple surveys, and people say, "Hey, you forgot a symptom," and so I'll
yeah.
add that. And I know the frequencies of these things. So like the cutoff for the 25 or 28 most common symptoms is that 30% or more of the long haulers have this symptom. So these symptoms are all, relatively common. And then I have additional 30 checkbox symptoms where they're less common, but they're still part of the long COVID constellation. So I think anyone, including the doctor, could give this to their patient and say, assess the severity of your symptoms. And if they score above a certain level, like in my opinion, it would be above 20 or something like that, opinion, almost certainly they would have long COVID. Now, if someone had some other chronic health condition like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or ME/CFS, maybe they would get a score above 20 also because there's a lot of overlap in many of these chronic health conditions. So I'm not claiming it's a diagnosis tool, but for the people that are in doubt, like just discovering that they might have long COVID, I think it's a useful thing. If you take it and you score 60 or 70 or 80, well, no doubt you have long COVID and you have severe long COVID.
I think I took the survey, I think last 1 month back, and my score was around 45. But if I
Well,
had I took it 6, 7 months back, it would have been definitely more than 70, 80.
Wow. Yeah. The average severity score is about 50% higher for women than for men. So recently I've been tracking my progress and I take my own survey occasionally. The other day I took it and I had a score of 2 or 3, which is one of my lowest
Nice.
scores. But during the middle of a flare up, like after, 2 days after lactobacillus, I might score, 8 or 9 or, something like that. I think that's the value of the survey. Like rather than think of it as a diagnostic tool, just use it as a report card. And so you can track your symptoms monthly and see, are you getting better? Are you getting worse? Is lactobacillus, helping over time, or is fasting
Yeah.
helping over time, et cetera. So
Yeah.
I want to kind of wrap things up now. And I just want to give
Yeah.
my current thoughts on if I'm a sick long hauler, like what should I do? Because, I have to say that because of the science, kind of because of my personal experience, I'm quite keen on lactobacillus, but I don't want to mislead people and say that, hey, this is a magic cure. It's not a magic cure. It's just one promising self-treatment approach. If people say, well, is it better to do water fasts or the lactobacillus? Honestly, I do not know. I'm trying to encourage people to do surveys in my informal autophagy protocol trials, which are like pilot data, hopefully to lead into a formal controlled, trial. But, this is all relatively new. One person I know, has done lactobacillus a number of times, and then he did a weekend water fast and he had a big flare up of symptoms. Just the way these viruses are tricky and mutate around like antiviral drugs and stuff, it might be a good idea to combine multiple approaches. I think the diet and the daily time restricted eating are beneficial for everyone. Like that should be a core practice. And then, take a cautious dosing of the lactobacillus. If you have a big flare up of symptoms, next time cut it in half.
Yeah.
And maybe do that for a couple times and then allow some rest days, because we need some rest days.
Definitely.
For cellular health and mental health and everything else. This is a long battle. And then, if you're feeling well enough, try a 36 or 60-hour water fast. It's okay to try some different methods. I do encourage people to cautiously try the lactobacillus.
Yeah. It's definitely, I think, very unique way of doing this. Also, it's very helpful if you get those flare-ups and if you see the symptoms are getting reduced after 2 or 3 days, it means it is working. And you have to, but still, if it is working, your approach should be very patient and not to overdo it. That okay, after taking 2 sachets, I'm feeling really good, so let's take 3 sachets next time, and you would just land yourself into trouble again.
Right. You use lactobacillus cautiously. In fact, a fellow long hauler called it kryptonite. If you're familiar with the comic strip character Superman. He was from the planet Kryptonite, and the one thing that would take away his superhuman strength was kryptonite. And we're hoping this is kryptonite for the SARS-CoV-2 virus, but it's kind of kryptonite for long haulers because it can cause a major flare up of your symptoms. So be cautious in the dosing. If you have a flare up that lasts 4 or 5 or 6 days or is just too much, then next time wait, and next time, cut the dose in half or even try a third of the dose.
Definitely.
Well, Mayur, so pleasant talking with you. It's amazing we can do this from opposite sides of the globe.
Yeah. It's really the one thing that COVID has brought so many people together, not only from one country but various different countries. They are communicating, sharing their thoughts, their problems. I think it's a good learning overall for everyone.
Yes, it's quite a challenge and trial for everyone the world over. And by sharing our knowledge and our experiences, we can all benefit.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayur.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much, and thank you, Tom, for helping me to get at least 70% of who I am right now.
The way to provide information and help us figure out what's going on with lactobacillus, how rapidly it's improving symptoms, or maybe it's not improving symptoms. The way to collect data is via my lactobacillus for long COVID surveys, or alternatively, if you want to do my informal autophagy protocol trials, that's diet and fasting for at least 2 weeks, and then picking one autophagy method for a month at a time. And one option is to pick lactobacillus. So there's a couple options to, track your symptoms and track your flare-ups and provide data and feedback on this. All right. Best wishes, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.